Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Chasing Collectibles Catchup. I'm Tyler, and we're super excited to have friend of Chasing Collectibles and Nerdfest and all the things, and an artist and a writer and just creator, Danny Quick. So, Danny, thanks for joining us.
No, thank you for having me, man. Nerdfest was really fun, man. I had a good time out there. It's not too far from my house, so a couple hours drive. Me and the kids had a good time, man.
Nice, that's awesome to hear. We're thrilled to hear that was a good time, and we're definitely looking forward to the next one. It's still weird being like post Nerdfest, the month leading up to it, we are just all like Nerdfest, 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 and now it's like, okay, now now we can breathe a little bit.
Right.
Uh, well, I thought I'd start off asking you, like, what is your comic book origin story in terms of not your characters, but like, how did you first get into like liking comic books and superheroes and things like that when you were, growing up? Was there any particular hero you liked, or what inspired you?
Man, this is gonna sound weird, and every time I tell this story, people don't believe me. But I actually did not even know comic books existed until I was an adult. I I watched every cartoon that was available. I grew up in a small town called Candor, North Carolina, and then I moved out here to Durham and Hillsborough, North Carolina. And I knew all the superheroes. I knew Spider-Man. I knew Ninja Turtles. I knew Batman and Superman. Any cartoon that was superhero based, I watched it. I knew all the characters and I knew all the stories and I loved them, but I did not know that they came from comic books until I was old enough to buy comic books myself. You know,
Right.
like I was introduced to. I want to say the first comic book I ever bought myself was World War Hulk. That was that event was happening, and I was like, "Oh shoot, this is like I don't know how I got into the zeitgeist. Maybe it was just friends or something at that time." And I was like, "Oh, I need to see this. Hulk is trying to kill all the Avengers. Like I need to read this." And
Right.
I got into reading comics, and then I ended up getting deployed to Iraq in 2008, 2009. And while I was there, me and a good friend and the co-creator of Ace Blade, we talked back and forth, and I was writing these stories about Ace Blade. But then when I got back, he took me to my first comic book convention. He
Oh,
took me
nice.
to Heroes Con in Charlotte, and it blew my mind. Like I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, these are regular people. Like these are human beings
Right.
that are making these stories, that are writing these stories." And making these comic books and real artists who are making these comic books. And I was like, why haven't we made Ace, why don't we make Ace Blade into an actual comic book? Because we had plenty of stories at that time. So yeah, it was my introduction into comics was all the cartoons, Ninja Turtles and Batman and Superman, all of that stuff. I'm a Kevin Conroy fan
Nice.
for the rest of my life, man. Rest in peace, Kevin Conroy. But um, that Batman the animated series show just did it for me, and
Oh, yeah.
here we are today.
Yeah, no, and I'm a huge Batman fan, so that really did it for me too, the animated series. And I mean, like you, I didn't even start, I think when I was a freshman in high school is when I first started buying comic books, but like I grew up watching all the TV shows and Dragon Ball Z also to kind of dip into the anime. And I was just like, oh, this is based off of stuff. I didn't realize that
Right,
this was like source material.
right,
So,
exactly,
it's good to know that other people were in that situation too.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's cool though. Like I think that because like comic books are a huge thing now in my brain. I can't imagine a life without comic books, but at one point I didn't know what comic books were, and I know that you know today there are millions and millions of people who read comic books, and there's millions more people who watch the movies, but they
Mhm.
don't know the source material. They may have never heard of Invincible Iron Man before, like
Right.
or they might not know who Damian Wayne is. Like they might not know these characters, and there's always somebody new to introduce comic books to.
Right, exactly. And I know for a lot of people, you're like, oh, Iron Man may be dead in the movies, but hey, you can still read his comics, or
Right.
there's, hopefully that's not a spoiler for anybody who's just jumping in. Hopefully we're all on the same page about that.
Everybody should know that by now for sure.
Well, so you mentioned Ace Blade. So I guess what kind of inspired you guys to write that? Because I was looking at it earlier, looking at some of your work, and I know our friend Tim
Mhm.
read it and he really liked it. So what inspired you guys to create that?
Yeah, man, it was that's really what it was. It was we both, me and Christoph, we both loved superhero stories. We loved, the clash of evil and good, and the all of the amazing characters that came from that. He's a huge Spider-Man fan. I love Batman and Ninja Turtles, like I said, and he was at the time he was making like costume jewelry for Green Lantern and stuff. Like he literally had a resin molds that he would pour and then put lights into, and then make them for people. He actually did one for that Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern movie. For in a secret cameo, there was a actor who was supposed to play John Stewart, and he actually did a ring for that guy. And and like it was just like, yo, we need to like we can make something cool like this. Like we can make a character and tell a story about him. And he had designed this character Ace Blade while he was in high school, and I just had like copious amounts of ideas of how
Right.
to put him in Vegas City, in Las Vegas, because he's the Vegas vigilante. We're gonna put him in Las Vegas, and all of his the villains are gonna be centered around greed and risking it all because that's what you do in Las Vegas.
Right.
And we just was like, man, we want to inspire people like we were inspired by these characters, and make something that people can fall in love with, but also do something different. We don't want them to be in New York or, any of the main areas that all the superheroes in. So it was like, let's put them in Las Vegas, man. That's a memorable place.
Yeah.
Um, and we just, we wanted to make something that inspired people and got people excited, and but also something that they didn't have to have 20 years of knowledge to understand. So
Yeah.
that's
Well,
important.
well, I think you addressed some of the like, for all I love comics, but like there's a couple of things I'm like, okay, I wish we could get away from like, New York is great, but it's like, why is every single superhero in New York and in Queens and Hell's Kitchen? Like, can't we have
Right.
someone in, what about Charlotte? Charlotte's
Right.
pretty cool.
Charlotte's a cool place.
Vegas
Like
or
something could happen in Charlotte. Who knows?
right,
Miami is what I was looking at, like the top tourist places in America. And I was like why don't they have more stories in Miami? And why don't they have more? I mean, Chicago's got some superheroes too. But like why don't they have, Los Angeles should have decades and decades of superheroes.
right.
Now they got the West Coast Avengers and stuff like that, but there's not really a lot for California and Los Angeles to be such a huge part of American zeitgeist.
Mhm.
We should definitely have more heroes out that way.
Right. So that's gonna be pretty cool, like having a partner like that kind of bounce ideas off of, and because we've had writers and artists on before, and that's a cool relationship to have between the person doing the art and then like the writing and process and all that. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, it is. It's fun, and that's one of my favorite parts of being a creator is like meeting new people, bouncing ideas off of each other, and and then like crossovers and stuff like that. Even though we don't have a ton of time and ton of money to go into projects where we cross over, but we can do a pin up. We can tell a story on a podcast or something like that. There's all kinds of ways to mix and match our characters and help promote each other and get these characters beside each other. It's one of the best parts of creating.
Yeah. And so, how long have you been doing Ace Blade at this point?
I stopped counting, but I always just say it's been more than 10 years.
Wow, that's awesome.
More than 10 years. Because I was writing the novel in 2008 when I was in Iraq. I was writing, but the stuff that I wrote ended up being a novel. We put out the novel in, I want to say 2012. And the first Ace Blade comic book, I think, came out in 2014. Um, so I know it's been over 10 years. That's all. So I just tell people
Yeah,
I've been doing comics for more than 10 years now. So yeah.
that's cool. Now, do you feel like your experience in Iraq did it at all like shape, like influence any stories you feel like you wrote or anything like that, or just your perspective in any way?
Kind of. Because I'll say that when I was over there, when I was deployed, you go over there with a mission and you go, you know, hoping to come back, and um and they tell you who your enemy is. They say this is who you're looking for. But while I was there, I realized that everybody that he said was my enemy was not necessarily the enemy. It was most of the people that I met while I was in Iraq, the people in the communities were just like me. They wanted to provide for their families, and they wanted to have clean drinking water, and they wanted to go to the movies and go to
Right.
school and stuff like that. And there was a small group of people who were causing a lot of trouble for
Right.
those people and for us. And even further than that, there was more people, who may have had a lot of money that were manipulating things behind the scenes. So
Right.
I think in Iraq, I definitely learned that the um the real enemy is not necessarily always easy to identify. And that's one of the things that you will definitely find in Ace Blade comics is that the enemy is not always just plain and simple. There's a person behind the situation that they're in, and the person that actually caused the damage is usually somebody else.
Right. And thank you for your service, by the way. That's
Oh, thank you, thank you.
yeah. I found because I've done some writing myself, and when I've been working on a story for about 10 years, and then when I was like younger, well, even younger than that, but when I was younger, it was very black and white, but as I've gotten older and almost, I don't know, I don't want to say more jaded, maybe more realistic. You're like, maybe the people we thought were heroes aren't necessarily, it's more gray and all that. So and I find myself liking the more gray stuff as I've gotten older too, you know. Um, so that's
Yeah,
really interesting.
I had
Uh,
my
oh, go
daughter
ahead.
was me and my daughter were talking about, I don't know if you watch My Hero Academia, but I was like, I'll never forgive this show for making me like Endeavor. Like there's a character named Endeavor on the show, and like he started off as this jerk. He was abusive as a father, and he was just a bad guy. Like he was like,
Yeah.
yo, this is the guy. This is a guy who's supposed to be a hero, but he's a
Mhm.
terrible, terrible person. He's done these things to his family. He's tried to, make these powers. He's tried to force his kids to do things, against their will, just to protect people. And then
Right.
like 3 seasons in, I was like, oh, they're starting a redemption arc for Endeavor. And I was like, I don't want to like this character, but the writers did such a good job. And I'm like, okay, Endeavor. Now she has a statue of Endeavor in her room, and like,
They
and
did it. They got you.
I'm like, they got me. They really got me. I'll never forgive them. But yeah, there's
Right.
always a deeper. I mean, it's good to have the surface level, just entertaining black and white. Sometimes it is. You can see it.
Yeah.
You know it when you see it. This person's a bad person. But sometimes it is a little gray also. So I think it's good to have both kinds of stories.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so I see that you have a new comic book coming out, and you've been doing a Kickstarter for it. And I was watching a video you did for it earlier, and I thought it was super creative. It was the one with you on the porch with the
Oh,
guitar. I thought that was really cool. I was like, oh, this is a neat, because you were like, oh, this is gonna be a little bit different, and it really was like how you pitched it. And so I know like the genre is different,
mhm.
the tone seems different. Can you tell us a little bit about the Battle of the Black Rose?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Ballad of the Black Rose. This is my new comic book. This is it's gonna be scheduled for 7 issues, but we got the first 2 issues on Kickstarter right now. Me and the Kyron Silva, who is the artist. He's also my co-host on the Four Tales podcast, where we, talk to other indie comic book creators. And he's just an amazing artist, and one of the most consistent dudes that I've ever met. And when I was thinking about writing something different, like I've mostly done superhero stories. I've done Ace Blade, King Supreme, and a bunch of other superhero stories, but I just love westerns. Like I grew up loving westerns alongside the superhero stories, and that's something that me and my wife we both enjoy still. Is a good western. So I was like, I want to write one. I want to write one but it was going to be a little different, like having a western with a twist of the family having some supernatural entity in the woods.
Mm.
That's controlling their daughter, and that gets him in trouble with the law. So it's a little adventure story about family and about sacrifice and doing what is necessary to protect to protect your family. So, but yeah, we're having fun with it, and I'm hoping for it to go to 7 issues to tell the complete story. And these first 2 issues are definitely important to get out there so that we can fund the rest of it.
Nice. That sounds really cool. And I'm a history teacher in my full-time job, and so I think it's really cool that you've got like this Western vibe. It seems it's very different because versus the modern time and
Mhm.
like the limitations of the Western world. So that's really neat.
Absolutely. And one thing that we talk about a lot in stories now, like modern stories, is that like technology can, answer a lot of questions. Like technology can solve a lot of problems in if you're telling a modern story. But I think it's pretty cool to go back to a time where you didn't have a cell phone and you didn't have satellites that could, give
Right.
you GPS directions to get
Mhm.
somewhere. And you really had to work in the community. You had to talk to people and earn the trust of people um, to survive day to day. And I think that kind of story is kind of refreshing, and it can really. One thing about stories is that they give you a chance to escape reality,
Mhm.
and putting yourself in a story like this absolutely does that.
Yeah. So is it that for the Kickstarter, is it like so you have the first issue out so far, or how's that working at the
So we
moment?
got the first issue is done, and the second issue is just about finished. So the Kickstarter is for the both of the first 2 issues, so you can get issues 1 and 2. We brought back the variant covers from the first issue to go in some blind bags. We got blind bags for the variant covers for the first issue, and we got new variant covers for issue 2 that we are making available also.
Sweet. And that's ongoing. So if I include the link and all that today, that people can still contribute and do all the things.
Absolutely. It's gonna be going through November 27th, I think. So we're doing it for 30 days. We just launched this morning, and I want to say that we're right at $1,400 right now. So
Nice.
we're doing okay for day one, but we still got a long way to go.
Right. Well, we'll definitely do our part to help you out. And I want to also ask, like, how is it different? So, because I know, like, with Ace Blade, that's kind of like an ongoing, continuous thing versus like making something like, okay, it's going to be a set amount of time, set
Yeah.
length. So, how's that different writing for that?
It's a lot different. I think because I have so many ideas for Ace Blade, I know that I have time. I think that I have time to get to some of those ideas, and I can pick and choose which ones to do first and which ones to put off till later. But with the Ballad of Black Rose, like it's a really localized story. The story is so has to be so focused,
Hmm.
to tell all these things because the way my mind works, the creative parts of me wants to like there are characters that you meet that I'm like, oh, I want to tell more about this character. Like there's
Right.
groups of in their journey to find out what this entity is that's messing with their life. Um, there's other characters that you're going to meet along the way, and I already have the itch to like tell those stories,
Hmm.
but I know I gotta
You
keep
got to stay on the path.
I gotta stay on the path to get to what the themes are in this story and to really drive that home. So yeah, I'm excited about it, and I think that it's different for me, but I have enough experience in writing now that I believe that we can do it.
Right. And that's so cool. It's like it's a different genre. This is one thing I wish I had more time and I guess more exposure with is like non-superhero stuff because I've read some non-superhero stuff that is like way better than superhero stuff. Not to dig at superhero stuff, but like I've read this thing by Scott Snyder, Undiscovered Country.
Mm,
It's by Comics, and it's basically about like the United States getting shut off for like 50 years and then coming back, and it's like this dystopian thing, and it was so cool. And I just sometimes the superhero stuff takes up so much attention, but there's so many other like really cool non-superhero things out there,
yeah,
you know?
I want to say Scott Snyder wrote the Canary book that I just read. Um, Scott Snyder has written some dope
He's
stuff in
he's one of
comics.
my favorites, yeah.
Yeah, and we have a book club here in Greensboro, comic book club, and we just read Canary, and I believe it was by Scott Snyder, and it was really good. It was a Western theme, but it also had some supernatural elements to it, which is why they suggested it. I was telling them about Ballad of Black Rose, and they were like, "Oh, you should check out." Canary. And I was like,
Right,
oh, this is that one's a little bit spookier than the mine's. Mine's a little more family friendly, but
right,
it was definitely off the superhero path.
right. So just thinking, like, do you have are there any like challenges that come with writing independently? I know you, like you have a really good like I was looking at your website, you have like a whole team that work with you to like produce other comics as well. So that's really neat. But like, are there any challenges overall to like trying to get something out there like this?
Yeah, I think but what's crazy is that the challenges that I'm facing, mainstream comics are facing those same challenges.
Hmm.
Of course, there's an oversaturation in the market of superhero stories, so I every time I put out an Ace Blade book, I have to convince somebody either to not buy the Batman book that they wanted to buy, or or spend some extra money to buy Ace Blade.
Right.
Um, and then with projects like this, when I first started, I expected that people that followed me and enjoyed Ace Blade would naturally want to check out something else that I'm writing. But Scott Snyder again, he had a similar issue with Canary. The comic book guy, the guys at the comic book store were saying Scott Snyder had written all of these amazing hits. They'd
Hmm.
written all of these stories that people loved. And then when Canary came out, nobody had heard of it. Nobody knew it was coming out. And, it didn't do as well as they projected because there was no marketing for it. So,
Right.
um, as an independent comic book writer, we have to market a lot of our stuff ourselves. We don't have DC and Marvel and Diamond to tell people about our books. We got to get out there and make content, and even though I enjoy making the content, it takes away from the other parts of the stuff that I want to be doing.
Right. For sure. And it is like I mean, I've got friends who are artists and all that, and they're trying to create their own content. And when you go around like to these like oh in Nerd Fest or even like the bigger shows, I mean, sometimes like the artist alley is so huge,
Mm,
and I wish I could spend. Sometimes I mean I do try to take my time, but it's hard. You want to look at everybody's stuff,
yeah,
and the old adage is like you can't judge a book by its cover, but sometimes it's just like, well, what am I seeing in that moment, and how much time do I have? And I imagine it's tough to really you know pitch your stuff, especially in like a short amount of time, and people's attention spans are just, you
yeah,
know, so
yeah.
limited.
But I will tell you, it's definitely helped. The marketing stuff that I was doing for Kickstarters and for other things, um, that marketing has helped. Like having my books available on TikTok and doing things on social media. When people come to shows now, I've had at least two or three people per show say, "Hey, I saw your stuff on TikTok.
Right.
I've seen you before. What is it? What is it? Ace Blade?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's me." So, yeah, it's definitely helped. And I wasn't expecting that at all. So, that's I think it's definitely worth doing.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like we said earlier, I mean, I thought Nerdfest was a blast, and you said you guys had a great time. It's always fun just getting to see folks at these conventions, like put faces to names and talk to people about stuff. So that was awesome. I'm glad you had a good time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love doing local conventions. I wanna do every show in North Carolina if I possibly can. North and South Carolina, up in Virginia, because I really think, especially now, it's good to get out in front of people. It's get out to be where people are. And if people are willing to come to a show, they're probably really comic book fans. And even
Mhm.
though, yes, it's hard to pitch to people, it's hard to catch somebody in that 10 to 30 seconds, the repetition matters. Like if I
Right.
can get out in front of somebody, they might not buy a book this time, but they might see it online later, or they might see me next year when they come back. So,
Right.
yeah, I think it's important.
For sure. I want to switch gears a little bit because I was looking over, like, speaking of socials and all that. One of the things you've been kind of teasing on your socials is your top 100 comic book movies.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and I wanted to talk about like what are some ones like can you think of any comic book movies that maybe aren't people's favorites, but like are like ones that you particularly like? Like it maybe one that you like, I'll defend this one. Like people may not like this one, but you know what? I liked it, and that's enough for me.
Yes. I recently did Time Cop.
Hmm.
You're probably not even old enough to have seen this movie,
I
Time
have
Cop.
not seen Tom Cop.
But do you know who John Claude Van Damme is though, right?
Yes, yes.
Actor, yeah. So he's a martial. He's one of them '80s, '90s martial artists. He did Bloodsport, kickboxer, and
Mhm.
he did this movie called Time Cop, and it was a time travel. It was exactly what it sounds like. It was a cop from the future who went back in time to stop a time heist. It was really a time heist, and that would disrupt the whole time continuum and space time continuum. And the movie was so um I can't say it was bad because I loved it. Like, and
Right.
I went back and I rewatched and I was like, this movie was actually pretty good. Even though I know nostalgia is pulling at me to give it a higher rating than it may have deserved, but Tom Cobb made it pretty high on my list. And by pretty high, I say like 60. It made it at
Still
number
pretty,
60
it's
on
still
my list.
decent.
Yeah,
Could have
that's
been
really
100.
there's a lot of comic book movies. So I had Ghost Rider 2 at my number 100. Madam Web is at 98, and then Morbius is at 94. So that should tell you like what the lower half of those of those movies
Right.
like. But yeah, Time Cop is one that I'll defend with my life. And then Max Steel also, that one came out a few years ago, and
I didn't
people
realize that was a comic book movie. That's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, people hated that movie. I think it's got like a 4 rating on Rotten Tomatoes or something like that right now. And I rewatched it and I was like, this movie is not that bad. Like it's
Right.
definitely not terrible. It was a solid movie. So
It
um
always surprises me sometimes when like you watch a movie and you're like, oh, that was, maybe it was good or it was fine. And then sometimes you go online and people are like, oh, that was the worst thing I've ever seen. I'm like, what?
right.
Like, come on, man. That can't be the worst. Like,
Yeah, right. There's some pretty bad movies, man. I just watched Howard the Duck because of
right.
this list. And that movie was really weird.
Right. Right. I remember my friend and I saw Joker too, and I personally I liked the first one. So the second one was like, you know what? I liked it. It was different, but I thought it was good. And then some people just canned it. I was like, oh, I thought it was fine. Like they were like, oh, this is the worst. I'm like, come on, it cannot be the worst.
I think it's all about expectations. I think
Yeah,
people expected one thing and they got another thing, and
yeah,
that's another reason why marketing is so important. Like if you market a movie, you say, "Hey, this is a continuation of this story, and it's got Lady Gaga in it." I mean, you're gonna expect a big budget,
right.
something,
I don't
and
think
then
people were
also
expecting the musical.
yeah, they weren't expecting a musical. So, I think that's part of what it is also. A lot of times, because that's what happened with me with Multiverse of Madness. I really thought it was going to be one thing, and then I went and saw it, and I hated it because it wasn't what I expected. So, yeah, some of these movies are better than we've remembered them. And I think it's important to go back and rewatch some things because you get a different perspective.
Right, for sure. Well, I want to talk also real quick, and this has kind of been a conversation too, like among artists and writers, is AI. And I think you posted something about it the other day. Um, I guess what are your thoughts on it? Because I think I talked to an artist, Chris McJunkin,
Mm.
a couple episodes ago, and he was this. I had to tell him like before the episode started, I was like, "What do you think about AI?" And he was like, he used an expletive to talk about AI. I was like, "Oh, so we can't use that in the show." But like, what do you think about it? So I
That
guess
sounds
what
like
your
that sounds like what Chris would say.
yeah, exactly.
um,
So,
all right, AI for me. Listen, if people want to use AI, do it. Whatever. I think it's a tool just like anything else. I do think that there are better uses for AI than to replace the creativity, right? I think that as humans, one of the most special things about us as humans is that we create art, right? We make things, we write things, we tell stories to each other, and that's one thing that I just don't think AI should do. I
right,
think that AI can do some amazing things, like it can help you with a budget or a schedule. It can do things to help you with your creativity, but I just don't think it should ever replace an artist or a writer. And I don't plan on using it in that way ever because I
right,
just I just don't see it as compelling. Like I think that our experience as humans are what helps us make, art, and AI is just stealing from people's experiences to put together something to I don't know. I just don't. I've never experienced anything that was AI that I thought was compelling enough to spend time on. Like I got 50 books over here that I
Right, made by real people.
that were made by real people that I actually want to read and don't have time for. So I'm not gonna spend time, looking at AI, AI comic book, when I got literally 10 issues of Absolute Batman that I got to catch up on, and I know those are good.
Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of a reassuring thing is like I wasn't when I answered that question, I wasn't thinking in my back of my head like, what is he gonna think? Because I think most artists and writers you talk to have a pretty firm no. I don't think I've seen any artist who's been like a real legit artist say, you know what, yeah, AI is pretty good. I think overall, and even like a lot of consumers have been saying, no, I don't want to read or watch anything made by AI. And I think that's reassuring, you know?
Yeah, like I said, I think there's places for it. Like we went and saw Neja. I went to the kids to see that, and I was like, man, this art is too, like, I had that thought in my mind, like this
Yeah.
has to be AI, like it has to be because
Mhm.
it's too good.
Right.
And I found out that they used a process where they actually had like 600 animators, but they also used to do the fine details. They used some AI in it, and I was like, I can tell, and it took away my respect for the movie. Like it was a very beautiful movie, like very well put together, but it took away my respect for it. But like I said, I know that there's places for it, and I know it's a tool that people have invested a lot of money and time in. So people are absolutely going to use it, but I'm always wary now when
Yeah.
I see something that's just too good. I think I like the human elements and the imperfections that humanity makes too much. Um,
Right.
yeah, so
Well, and this kind of last thing on that is like I've heard people say like, well, it makes it more accessible. I could become a guitarist, I could be a writer, I could be an artist using AI. And I'd tell someone, put the work in. Like I would rather see someone's like art that's not necessarily the greatest thing in the world. I'd rather see that you tried than, just spit in whatever, AI, you did with. So yeah, I'd much rather respect that than I would, anything else.
yeah, I learned a couple chords on the guitar, as you heard in my video. They
Yeah,
weren't
it was good.
they weren't good at all, but I learned a couple chords, and I was actually gonna try to write a song for it, but I just ran out of time. But I did learn a couple chords, and I was very proud of getting my fingers right and
Yeah, yeah, that's
being
hard. I've
able
been
to.
trying to teach myself. It's tough.
It's difficult,
Guitar's
but I
tough.
think it's very rewarding also when you
Mhm.
actually learn how to do something.
Mhm.
And that just can't beat that. So, yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. Well, just kind of closing out here before we have to go. What advice do you have for anyone that's trying to get into, just writing and creating this in this kind of world where you're taking something that we have this idea and trying to make it more than just an idea, but something real that they're putting out there.
I always tell people to do everything that you can do yourself before you start reaching out to people to work with you, especially if they are professional artists or professional writers. Nobody has a lot of time. And if you come to somebody before you're ready, that first impression is always a lasting impression. So if you do as much as you can yourself and have it as prepared as possible before you reach out to somebody, because making comic books is a collaborative process. I mean, there's some amazing creators who can do everything themselves, like Fish Lee and Kyron Silva. They can literally write, draw, edit, letter, everything themselves. But most people who make comic books, they work with a team. So doing the most that you can before you reach out to other people, I think has always been a thing that has made me successful in collaborations. I'm usually very prepared when I approach people to work with, and I'm always respectful of their time and their prices. So don't try to haggle an artist price. If they say, hey, it's $100, it's $100.
Right.
And in my experience, that's how you get their best work. Respect their prices, respect their policies, and they'll do great work for you.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this has been awesome. I really enjoyed talking to you, and we're super excited for the comic. Again, that's gonna be the Ballad of the Black Rose, and the Kickstart is still ongoing. So I really hope people check it out. I'm definitely gonna check it out, and I hope people who follow you and follow us definitely give it some time because it looks really neat, and the story sounds awesome.
No, thank you so much, man. Again, I appreciate y'all having me, and I can't wait for the next Nerd Fest. I'll definitely be out there.
Awesome, man. We're excited for it too. And thanks again for coming on, man. It's been awesome.
Yay! Comic!